So, a very warm welcome to all the participants to our sixth webinar of our core program webinar series. The title From Idea to Evidence Transforming Through Systematic Reviews and Meta Analysis. We are delighted to have researchers, faculty members, and students joining us today from different institutions and regions. Before we begin to today's session, I would like to briefly walk you through our project CORE, that is Community Focused Oral Health Research and Equity. It is a 4-year research program funded by UK National Institute for Health and Care Research (NIHR) to address the neglect of oral diseases in 4 middle income countries, and they are India, Kenya, Brazil, and Colombia. Hello,
Yeah, we can hear you, Parsh.
can you hear me?
Yes.
So coming back to the session, this webinar is designed to provide researchers a clear, structured, and practical roadmap for converting a research idea into a scientifically rigorous, systematic review and meta-analysis. Whether you are at the stage of conceptualizing a topic or planning or your methodologies, today's discussion will guide you through each essential step in the process. Before we proceed, I would like to give a few webinar etiquettes that this is a 1 hour webinar series. So kindly keep yourself mute so that there will be no disturbance in between the session. And we are requested you to note down your queries and raise them during a question and answer segment, which we will be having at the end of the webinar. And today, we are truly appreciate your presence and active participation for this session. Once again, I'd like to welcome you all for today's session. Now, I'd like to welcome Professor Abhishek Mehta. He is a principal investigator of the CORE leading team India, and he is also a professor from Faculty of Dentistry, Jamia Millia Islamia. Welcome, sir, and kindly introduce our speaker of the day. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Barsha. It's truly an great occasion and an honor for me to welcome one of my colleagues, Dr. Priyanka Kapoor, whom I have known for more than 10 years now. Dr. Priyanka is heading the Department of Orthodontics at Faculty of Dentistry, Jamia Millia Islamia, and she has more than 20 years of experience post MDS. She has done her MDS from AIMS, New Delhi. She's a researcher from the beginning of her career, and if I'm not wrong, I'm not looking at anything, but I think you have been working on forensic sciences. Apart from orthodontics, you've been forensic sciences, and I think or this obstructive sleep apnea. She has been working on it, and she had developed some tool to record the OSA, and she is also working on biological mediators, if I'm correct. And she has been a recipient of many awards and publication and grants from national as well as international. And it's a truly an honor to us for us that ma'am has agreed to join to give an insight into uh, systematic review, how to do a systematic review, and that is the first step for developing an evidence base, and then of course going on for a meta-analysis. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us today. It's over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abhishek. And I think not as a colleague, as a friend, I really thank you for giving me this opportunity today to share my thoughts on evidence-based research, systematic reviews, meta-analysis. I think this is really, really close to my heart, and I'm really thankful to you for giving me this opportunity. If you allow, can I share my screen now?
Please, ma'am.
Can you see the screen? Is the screen visible?
No, ma'am, it's still sharing. It's loading.
Slowly.
Okay.
It will come. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So I think my introduction has already been given. And yes, Dr. Abhishek has very kindly pointed out that I work in biomarkers and I work in evidence based research. Both of them are very, very close to my heart. And anything that I share today in my presentation is totally based on my practical experience of doing this structured research. And incidentally, my foray into structured research was not something which came as a researcher, but it came as an interest which I developed during my postgraduate thesis, which was on interleukin 1 beta during canine retraction and distraction. And let me tell you a very short story before I begin with. So, since my thesis topic was on biomarker and I was really interested in this subject, so after I completed my MDS, I started collecting all the evidence that was there with respect to biomarkers in orthodontic tooth movement. But I had no clue how to go about it. So one day I would type cytokines in tooth movement, the other day I would type enzymes in tooth movement, the third day I would type biomarkers in tooth movement, and whatever results came, I would compile that. And after 6 months, I got tired and I thought I'd done enough. And it's a very good research that I've done. Now I should compile it and send it to one of the good publication houses of orthodontics. So I sent it there. And you can't imagine what kind of critical comments came back because nothing was structured in my research. I had no clue about any kind of search strategy, any kind of keywords that I had to use, how to make a search strategy, how to apply it across databases, and then how to compile those results in an evidence based format. I had absolutely no clue. So the reviewers were very kind to give me very critical comments. And from there, my journey started. And you see, this is the current journey that I have. And I'm really thankful to the publications that I've done in evidence based forum, which have earned me a lot of citations and a lot of recognition as a researcher. But still, I do not claim that I know everything about the subject. I'm still learning. And they're based on the questions that will happen today. Maybe I get to learn more from you guys because many of the audience here are primarily from MPH and public health. So I think they maybe helping me more than learning from me. And then the steps of conducting research, I think everybody of us has traveled this ladder and traveled it down, and there's so many roadblocks on the way that have come. But for the beginners in the audience, I would still like to say that I think Dr. Abhishek is there in the audience, maybe the other senior faculty is also there in the audience, and they would all agree with me that we have learned it the hard way. But we do not want you all to learn it the hard way. So we are trying to make it quite easy for you and also taking out all the roadblocks that come in the way. The softwares that can be useful for you along the way, that also I would be mentioning. The AI tools, I would also be mentioning that would be helpful along the way. So just have some patience and let's, begin this search. You have many times you would have wondered, you would have a research question with you and then you would be bewildered. So many articles are there on that particular topic. What should I follow? What should I not follow? Because this is not an era of just a general practice, I'm saying. This is an era of evidence based practice. And the evidence based practice actually is resting on three pillars. The first pillar is definitely what is the clinician's expertise. So, if I have this question with me, would aligners work in my fixed orthodontic case the same way as a conventional orthodontic treatment? Why I took this example? Because definitely aligners, everybody knows about aligners. So to say, because of Tutsi also, many of you would be very much aware of the aligners that are very prevalent in orthodontic practice nowadays. So if I have this question that in a particular case, would aligners work in the same way as a conventional orthodontic treatment? I would like to gather some evidence because evidence-based practice definitely agrees that I should have that clinician's expertise to do aligners and also the patient's preference, whether the patient would agree to do aligners versus the conventional orthodontic treatment. And the third very important pillar is the scientific evidence related to it. So evidence-based practice is resting on these three pillars. And even one of the pillar is weak, it won't work. So yes, I definitely get confused whenever I have a question in my mind and I start looking. There is so much of information available on the net. Every 3 minutes, one article is being added on PubMed. So you see so much amount of scientific literature added every minute. What to search, what not to search, how to identify which search is more authentic and which you can use directly in your practice, what kind of evidence to use. That is actually what we're here to discuss about. So, what are the primary sources? So, if I take this Q only, this question only, well, the primary sources would be okay, I get some information collected in the form of the studies that I have done in my own clinic. I would try to get information from that. They would be case reports or case series. I would also like to collect other people's work who have done in their own clinics, whether nationally or internationally. It would definitely amount to case series or some cohort studies or maybe case control studies. But is that enough? No. Then I would then proceed to any kind of randomized trials related to fixed orthodontic treatment versus aligner treatment. I would like to identify that information that has been published across the globe. And then that definitely would have a higher evidence than the case reports or case series that have been published, because they're in a small population, and the methodology that have been used in those case series, case reports, or cohort studies are not as stringent as that have been used in randomized clinical trials. So, definitely, all the evidence that is generated from the randomized clinical trials in clinics is holding more value than the case series or the cohort studies or the case control studies. But is that a compilation? Well, one RCT can be done in one clinic, the other RCT can be done in another clinic. But how would we compile that? Well, for that, let me tell you, we have secondary sources. So the secondary sources of evidence can be compilation of all the primary studies, and analyzing the data that has been collected critically, and then publishing it in the form of systematic reviews, meta-analysis, which definitely hold a very high evidence value than alone the RCT is taken into account. Apart from that, the secondary sources can be practice encyclopedia as well. They don't hold that much of value because they are just opinions also. So if you look at the hierarchy of evidence, you start from the lowest, which is the case series, case reports that I just mentioned. You progress to the cohort studies, then the randomized control trials. And if you compile all the evidence from the randomized control trials done across the globe on that particular topic, then definitely you have the highest quality of evidence, which is available in the form of systematic reviews of RCTs done on that particular topic. As I said, public opinion versus evidence based opinion. And let me tell you, there is no two thinking about it, because this is an era of evidence based practice, and you need to be well versed about the evidence that is published on any healthcare modality that you're using in your clinics. So, definitely, public opinion holds no value. Public opinion also says that aligners work the same way as the fixed orthodontic treatment. But if you look at this systematic review, which is published by Paparaggio, well, this is a very good researcher and he publishes high quality systematic reviews. So anything published from his lab is definitely holding a high value of importance. And he says there is a weak evidence which says that the aligners work the same way as the fixed conventional treatment in certain cases that he has mentioned in the systematic review. So you see, weak evidence. So we cannot be sure that they're going to work the same way. Other example can be, yes, many of the oral appliances are now being used, as Dr. Abhishek mentioned initially, that we are working in OSA also. So this is another example that I'm taking, that the oral appliances and the functional appliances are being used in OSA in children. But when I tried to collect the evidence again, I was confused and I was looking at all the evidence related to it. But then I got through a Cochrane review. And let me tell you, the primary evidence were 14 studies that were included in this, and only one study could qualify the quality. And based on that, they have again mentioned that the evidence is quite weak. So, unfortunately, dental systematic reviews primarily fall in the area of 3 or 4, where the evidence appears to support but is not completely definitive, or there is inadequate evidence. So, where does it leave us as clinicians? Well, we have to generate high quality of primary evidence in our clinics, so that the data can be compiled into high quality of secondary evidence in the form of systematic reviews and meta-analysis, so that we can actually apply that healthcare intervention in our practices straight on, so that now the evidence will fall in one or two, that it should support a particular treatment, or it should definitely say that it does not support a particular treatment. But right now, All the dental systematic reviews fall in either 3 or 4, which is like a gray area. So we are not able to tell whether we should do this practice or we should not do this practice. Well, if you talk about how are they helpful to the governments? Well, they have to, divert their money to the healthcare practices, which are actually holding a lot.
Screen is frozen. Dr.
Remember
Priyanka?
that in COVID-19 times, visible?
No, visible, but stopping in between.
Okay, but
It's okay. It's okay.
it's
I
okay.
think it's network problem. Just hide this. Stop sharing. By it's written hide. Just hide that. It's coming on the
Okay.
PPT. So,
So, very interestingly, let me
no,
tell you one
your
example.
sharing has stopped. No, no, don't stop sharing.
Oh,
Just hide that.
just a minute.
Just share.
So, is the slide visible now?
It will come. Yeah.
So, anyways,
Okay.
I can keep on talking even when the slide is not there. But that's okay because in COVID-19 times, there was one medicine, if you remember, remdesivir. So, people were actually hell bent on procuring it at whatever cost possible because it was a known opinion that it is going to help the COVID-19 patients. But then ICMR came up with one of the systematic reviews which said that it holds no value in improving the life expectancy of the patients. So, you see, the public opinion versus the evidence based opinion is quite a bit different. So we have to rely on this kind of systematic reviews to have any clinical policy decisions where the government can actually spend their time, effort and money on it. So, what do you expect from this lecture? Well, I'll be just telling you brief about what is literature review, definition and types, how is systematic review different, what is the need, steps, and meta-analysis. Just a brief introduction, and then the limitations, and all practical, which I have done just with my own, the effort, and then the team which I've created. We have all worked together towards it. So, if you talk about literature review, many a times, as I said in the initial anecdote that I told you, that when I started collecting that evidence on biomarkers in tooth movement, that was a literature review which I was planning because I was just collecting all the data and just compiling it. But I came to know that literature review is not just a narrative review. You have 14 different typology of reviews, and they are all different in the form of SALSA, which is how the search is done, how the appraisal of evidence is done, how the synthesis of evidence is done, and how that evidence is analyzed. Let me give you an example. So, if you look at major 5 categories of reviews which are available, which you usually do in your research backgrounds, one is narrative review, one is critical appraised review, one is scoping review, rapid review, and systematic review. Out of these, if you just take 3 for better understanding, one is narrative review, one is scoping review, and one is systematic review. If you look at the speed, well, narrative review is very rapid. Whatever comes to your mind, you just take that evidence and you just, compile it and you present it to the reviewers, and then you get critical comments like I got. But if you talk about scoping review and systematic review, it has a lot of critical methodology involved into it. The methodological detail is quite heavy, so it takes a lot of time. Risk of bias, definitely, as you go down, systematic review has a very less risk of bias. The studies that are included in a systematic review are assessed for quality before being included in the systematic review. So there is a less risk of bias, and the comprehensiveness is completely total in systematic review because you collect all kind of evidence from all kind of databases for that particular question in a systematic review, which you do not do in a narrative review or even a scoping review. How is a systematic review different? Well, a systematic review is just based on a clearly formulated question. Again, let me give you an example. Like I said initially, that I wanted to study the biomarkers in tooth movement, but I had no clear research question in my mind. I just was interested in studying the biomarkers in tooth movement. But is that a research question? No. So ultimately, when I again sent it after a year of formulation into a form of systematic review, I had a clear research question in my mind that I wanted to study the effect of cytokines on the tooth movement whenever whenever there is a difference in forces or a difference in type of forces that are applied in the tooth movement. So you have a clear set of formulated questions that use systematic and explicit methods to identify, select, and critically appraise. We'll again give examples. So you should have a specific research question, which you don't have in a narrative review, you don't have in a scoping review. Let me give you a brief idea about what a scoping review is. As the name suggests, a scoping review is going to give you a broader scope about a specific topic. Like, suppose if a particular topic is very new, not many studies have been published on it, but you want to know its expense at the various kind of interdisciplinary arenas, then you need to do a scoping review. A systematic review would not be possible because the preliminary search would not give you that many amount of primary studies. But if you want to do a scoping review and you want to get a whole idea about that particular topic, then a scoping review would be better. How a scoping review is different from a systematic review? Definitely, you have a specific search strategy in a scoping review. You do all comprehensive search in all the databases, but you do not do quality assessment. You do not do any international registry, which we will be talking about. You can have a narrative format of appraisal. You do not have a specific research question, which you have there in a systematic review. And for the clinical recommendations, which you give in a systematic review, you do not give in a scoping review. We'll give you the examples. So this is a kind of narrative review which I had published. A review on biomarkers in perimeniscule implant crevicular fluid. I'll just show you my work because I can explain it better with that. So narrative review, in a narrative review, as I said, I did not have a particular research question. I wanted to study all the biomarkers in perimeniscular implant fluid for stability. So this was primarily my area of interest. But if you look at the whole article, I have given it, I have, comprehensively searched all the databases, and I have compiled it in a tabular form, just like it is done in a scoping or a systematic review. So, for the newer researchers who are attempting even a narrative review, this is my sincere advice to you. Right now is not the time that even a narrative review has to be done previously how it was done. You have to have a preliminary some keywords or some search strategy in your mind, and you have to take it to more than one database. You have to compile all, although the compilation can be definitely narrative in a narrative review, but the search and the comprehensiveness cannot be same as it was done 50 years ago. So yes, even if you look at this narrative review, it is done primarily half in a critical format, and the analysis or how the results are portrayed is in a narrative form. Then you look at the scoping review. So these are different, like one is published in forensics, one is published even in COVID-19, one is published very recently in 2026 in biomolecular signals in mandibular condylar cartilage, which is my current area of interest. I'm doing PhD in this particular area. And one more thing that I would like to tell the PG students here, if there are any in the audience, well, for them, this particular scoping review is just the review of literature of my PhD thesis. So if you're doing a thesis for your MDS or for your MPH, if you're doing a thesis, you can prior publish your review of literature in the form of scoping review, like I have done. It is published in 2026 just now. You can compile all the data because you don't need a specific research question, as I said, but you want to know the whole scope of your thesis area. So this is a perfect way to actually, write down your review of literature. Don't do it in that format like we've been doing it for ages. The abstract, you cut paste the abstract and you put it in the form of a review of literature. No, don't do that. Do it in the form of scoping review. It holds more value and it will give you a publication even before you appear for your thesis or your PhD exam. So that is much better. So yes, scoping review definitely does not have a very specific research question, but the comprehensiveness of search is the same as in a systematic review, and it does not have a quality assessment, but definitely it has to be compiled in the same manner as is done in a systematic review. For systematic review and meta-analysis, if I tell you, you see, this is the particular article that I told you that got rejected before in the form of narrative review, and then it got published. The effect of orthodontic forces on cytokine and receptor levels in gingival clavicular fluid, a systematic review. It has earned me a lot of citations also, and it was the first article that actually generated my interest in this direction. So I'm very, very thankful to those reviewers again. And yes, this is the meta-analysis that was published later on. But what are the kind of studies that you include in your systematic review is very, very important. Because if the individual studies that you include in your systematic review is going to produce bias, or it has some kind of flaws in it, then definitely if you compile that evidence and you present it in the form of systematic review, that holds no value. The evidence would still be low. There will still be bias in the results. And the meta bias is also how you perform the steps of systematic review. So both the cases can introduce bias, which we have to avoid in while conducting a systematic review. Well, this is a systematic review copyright that we published. The steps, you can go through it, and this is a chart that was published, and this has comprehensively, we have mentioned all the steps that are involved in conducting a systematic review. But if you look at a short form, these are step 9, and we would be taking each step separately. So if you just tell me that I have to begin systematic review, and I ask you, do you have a topic in your mind? Well, you can tell me, yes, I have some clinical topic in my mind because I have some problem in the clinic which I'm facing. Maybe I have a patient, I don't know whether to give a functional appliance or to give a regular fixed orthodontic treatment, and that may be one topic in my mind. But if you don't have a topic in your mind, then what you do? Then you can just go through the three main journals of your particular specialty. You can go through three last issues of your journals of your specialty, and you can see what kind of topics are getting repeated again and again. Please see, I'm mentioning topic. I'm not saying that that is a research question, just the area which you can work on. So I just searched this American Journal of Orthodontics and the Angle Orthodontist, and I came to know that aligners were one thing that were coming again and again. Even OSA was one thing that was coming again and again. Retainers were one thing that were coming again and again. So definitely these are few areas where if I'm completely blank and I don't know if I have a topic of systematic review in my mind, I can look for any of these topics because they come in the finer criteria, which is feasibility, which is F, innovation or interesting, novelty, ethical, and relevant. Most importantly, they have to be relevant in the current times. If you are publishing any systematic review which is not relevant to the current times, who is going to read that article and who is going to apply that in the clinics? No one. So you have to look for the topics. That is why I said just look for three last issues of your major journals so that you come to know what are the topics being discussed more often these days in the scientific communities. So those are the topics that are of interest to you, and they're most repeatable in the current journal issues. And they can also be any priority topics, like cancer will always be a priority topic. So you can look for those topics which are particularly interested in the healthcare related activity in the current times. So for me, I've taken down three main topics which were repeating again and again, like orthodontic retainers and periodontium, dental bleaching aids and their effectiveness, craniofacial parameters on lateral cephalograms. So I'll be taking these examples again and again. So once I identify, okay, these are the few areas, I would start looking for preliminary screening of studies. This is just preliminary screening because I have to see whether there are sufficient amount of primary studies available which I can compile and then present in the form of secondary research in the form of systematic review. So yes, I started looking for preliminary research and took two keywords, obstructive sleep apnea and craniofacial parameters. I just compiled it. I put it on Google Scholar. I put it on PubMed, and I got so many results. So yes, definitely work had been done in these particular parameters. You can also actually search as a different criteria, and we take workshops separately because how you have to conduct search is very, very diligent. But for preliminary search, you can go to Google Scholar, which I don't recommend. Please do not go to Google Scholar when you are actually conducting your systematic review because it gives you so many results which are not at all relevant to you. Always go to scientific databases. For us, PubMed is most important, Embase is most important, Scopus also is important, and others like Cochrane is important. You can also go to JGate, you can go to DOAJ, you can go to many other sites. But Google Scholar is of no use if you are going to conduct search for your systematic review. Once you've identified the research topic, I'm just saying topic, you formulate a team. Never go alone. Like initially, when I had begun, I was alone. I started searching one day one thing, the other day the second thing. So I was alone. I did not know that I need to have a team to perform a systematic review, which is first and foremost. One is that what you must have is a systematic review expert. Please don't shy away from asking for help, because there are so many people who are doing good quality systematic reviews now, and please, and they are well versed with the systematic review terminologies and the steps that are done to for the systematic review. So please take one of the method expert, and the content expert a must. Like if I'm taking a topic of maybe biochemistry, I need a biochemistry expert with me, because orthodontics is not the primary content for that particular topic. For COVID-19, we had taken again, a medical expert with us. So minimum of two reviewers are a must. A single reviewer should not review the studies independently. It has to be done by two reviewers, and then if there is any discrepancy, it has to be sought out by a third reviewer. So consensus has to be obtained by a third reviewer, and arbitrations of conflicts has to be resolved. Preferably, if I'm doing particularly a topic on aligners versus fixed orthodontic treatment, and there is an RCT published on it, I should connect with the authors of that RCT, and I should try to have that author with me in my team for this particular systematic review. It will always help you with the methodology. Pilot test assessment of risk of bias tools should always be done prior on a few studies, so that you know what is the best tool that could be available for that particular research area that you're working on. Identify the issues and revise the tools. Yes, you can do that for even quadas or ROB tools. You can actually revise those. Then once you've identified the research area, now you have to break them into key concepts. So key concepts are basically PICO, which is population intervention comparison and outcome. So if it's a population and the topic is dental bleaching aids and their effectiveness, if this is particular topic which I'm looking for, so my population would be people who are using bleaching aids. My intervention variable one would be home bleaching aids, comparator would be office bleaching aids, and what is the outcome I'm trying to study is effectiveness. Now, this is not a time usually we do a kind of a workshop with this, because you have to identify the key concepts, because they're important for formulating your search strategy also later on. So you have to break it down into key concepts like population, intervention, comparison, and outcome. Optional are time frame. You can add the study designs. PCOS format ho sakta hai, PCOT format you can have, but preferably PICO format has to be there. You should be asking what kind of question do you want. Do you want a comparative question, whether the dental bleaching aid, the home bleaching aid is more effective than the office bleaching aid, or you want it to be descriptive, how effective are these aids in all manners, you want to study that, or you want it to be exploratory, what are the factors that will influence the effectiveness. So many questions on one particular topic. So don't limit yourself to one particular topic. You can formulate multiple questions, and then your team can decide whichever you want to take ahead. So these are the various kinds, classifications of types of questions that you can have on one particular topic. You can have incidence, prevalence, therapy, screening, diagnostic, prognosis, harm, etiology, preventive. Very interestingly, sometimes, we go ahead that, okay, now I want to study this. Suppose I want to study accelerated tooth movement, and I want to study the invasive versus non-invasive methods of accelerated tooth movement. Now I have this research topic in my mind, and I start looking at the various databases like Cochrane, or I start looking at Prospero, whether these have been registered or not. And I come to know, oh, all these have been registered. Now what can I do? Either I don't use this topic at all, or else I can tweak the question. I can tweak it into prevalence, I can tweak it into therapy, but I can change my research question based on the research topic which is already registered in Prospero or Cochrane, because you don't have to repeat it. Duplication is not allowed at all, because there's so much of effort, time involved in doing a systematic review. Why would you like to duplicate a review? So you have to look for any other research question, and these are the various classifications of questions that you can have. So you can tweak the same. If you're interested in working on that same topic, you tweak your research question a bit, and then you can do that. And yes, for the youngsters here, the research question, you can also use the AI help. I did not tell you to start with the AI because you need to know the whole process, and AI can give you very hazy or blurred results, which you should not use in your critical review. But at particular steps and particular points where I'm mentioning, they're quite useful. So once you have a topic in your mind, you can just type it and you can say that, okay, you find the research questions for systematic reviews related to orthodontic retainers and periodontium. It is going to give you a list of research questions. Now you can find out whether these research questions or these type of questions have already been registered or not registered. But don't ask the AI that whether they have been registered or not. Take that effort, go to Prospero, go to Cochrane, type those keywords, and you try to find out yourself, because it is definitely going to give you very wrong results. You can just take the help, find research question for systematic reviews related to orthodontic retainers and periodontium. Use the formats like I said: Pico format, standard question format, or additional formats. You can use AI for helping the help in formulating the research question, because you can tell the AI, okay, now you put it in a Pico format. So that, okay, that much help is allowed. There is nothing wrong in that. But don't take the use of AI from the very beginning. Okay, give me a research area, give me a research topic. Do that homework yourself, and then you reach the stage, then definitely AI can be of great use to you. For the title, yes, definitely, it is very indicative. Title is very, very important. Why I'm saying it's very, very important? Because it is the one which is your gateway to the researchers community, because they're going to know you by your work. How they're going to search for your work? By typing some keywords. And if those keywords are missing in your title, you will not be visible. And whatever you've published is for your own reading. Would you like to do that? No, I would not like to do that. If I've taken an effort, it is not for me to read. I want the other people, the researchers community, to read it. And how they're going to read it? If it is going to be visible with some standard keywords that you use in your title. So, preferably, your title has to be in a Pico format. It can be an abbreviated version of your aim. Just lose all the redundant words in your aim, and your title is ready. So, if your whole aim is how do home and office dental bleaching treatments differ in terms of tooth whitening effectiveness, sensitivity, and overall patient satisfaction, you can just write the title as Comparative Study of Home and Dental Bleaching Treatments. This assessment of tooth whitening may or may not be included, but you can just shorten your aim, and that can be your title. And if it's a systematic review, please write a systematic review. If it's a scoping review, please write a scoping review, because that's going to give you more visibility. Again, another example: how do craniofacial parameters vary in adult OSA patients as compared to adult control subjects? The first title can be Craniofacial Parameters in Adult OSA Patients, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis, or Craniofacial and Upper Airway Morphology in Adult OSA, which has already been published by us. Title, as I said, these are my own titles, and I have learned it the hard way. As I said, in 2015, I used to write such horrible titles like Photo Editing in Orthodontics, How Much is Too Much? Nothing you'll come to know, although it has all the DW Chromic guidelines of photo editing in this. If you look at this, it's a long article and has all the information in it, but you would not read it because the title doesn't tell you anything. But now, this another article is with Dr. Aman and Dr. Abhishek also: development, testing, and feasibility of customized mobile application. You can learn everything about the study which has been done by the title itself. So what I'm trying to say is, title is your first gateway to the researchers community. So spend some time writing the title. It can be an abbreviated form of your aim, but it should preferably have a Pico format. Then check for duplication of topic. As I said, once you've entered the topic, type those keywords in Prospero. If it is there already and you still want to work on that topic, tweak the research question as I just mentioned, and then you can do the systematic review. You can also search for Cochrane. if there is any duplication. After the duplication you've checked, now you check for Prospero. Prospero is another international registry for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. You have to do it prior to beginning your search. The preliminary search is fine. You've done the preliminary search, okay, some articles are available, that's okay. But after that, the next steps that you do has to be done after registering in Prospero. That is a must for systematic reviews, but it is not mandatory for scoping review. So that is a difference between scoping and systematic review. You have to register. This is the main key points, and it will give you a roadmap to perform the systematic review. For the first timers, it will give you everything, because you have to identify the keywords, you have to formulate the search strategy, identify the inclusion exclusion, finalize the data extraction, identify primary and secondary outcomes. That is another separate workshop, but this is how the interface looks like. So you have to enter all the details of your team. You have to enter the anticipated start date, anticipated end date. Then you have to enter all the details that you envisage how you are going to conduct that systematic review. It itself is a class, because you're going to read what kind of primary outcomes you would like to study, what kind of data extraction would you like to do. So all that has to be entered in these interfaces, and you can go to this Prospero International Prospective Register of Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis, which is very, very important if you are planning to do a systematic review. Please do not go ahead before registering in this international register. After that, you can apply for search strategy. Where to search? Well, there are so many comprehensive databases available. As I said, PubMed, Scopus, Embase, Web of Science, Cochrane. Incidentally, our university gives us the privilege of using Scopus and Web of Science, not Embase. Embase is there in PGI if anybody wants to use it. But yes, and AIMS also has it, but they give it on hourly basis. So you have to find out where these databases are available, because many of them are very costly. So the subscriptions are not available in all the universities. And the gray literature, as I said, in the form of dissertations or thesis, you actually produce a very high quality of gray literature. And nowadays, I think major institutes or universities are having an online registry for your thesis, so that that is also available in a soft copy format, and you can actually go through it. So it's very important that if you're looking for a topic, you should also go through high quality of gray literature. And this is the high quality of gray literature. You have other sites like OATD, which is International Register for Thesis and Dissertations. You can go through that also. There also the theses are registered, which are online available. Additional search can be hand search, because sometimes you get to know, okay, this particular person has published it, but it's not coming in any of your databases. Or you can also do a reference search, because that can be a snowballing of search. You can go through all the references of the articles that you have identified, and from there also few articles can come that can be reference search. But the search strategy has to use a Boolean terminology. I'll just tell you how. Search is another different topic, and it takes a lot of effort and workshop to actually learn how to do the search the right way. You have to apply it on 3 or more databases, as I said, and additional gray literature also. And this is actually a composition of the major databases that I've just compiled here for you to have a look at. But how to search is, again, on a particular clinical question, you have to divide into the key concepts. Again, as I said, key concepts can be effectiveness of home bleaching versus office bleaching and tooth whitening. So there are three main concepts. One is home bleaching, one is office bleaching, and one is tooth whitening, which is the outcome that you're going to mention. So PICO, all the major PICO format is there, intervention is there, comparator is there, outcome is there. Population is okay, because the people who are using home bleaching or office bleaching are basically the population. So these concepts I have highlighted. Now you have to combine these concepts with the Boolean terminology, which is and, or not. If there are two different concepts, then you have to combine it with and, like home bleaching and tooth whitening, office bleaching and tooth whitening. So there are two different concepts, or can be synonyms, like home bleaching, if it can have a synonym like home bleach, or office bleach can have dental office bleach. something like that. So basically, all the synonyms can be combined with or, and two different concepts can be combined with and there is definitely a mesh browser which is available at the PubMed site. If you go through it and you just scroll down, you'll find a mesh which is medical subject heading browser, and that is actually a vocabulary of PubMed. So it has an advantage that if you use a particular word in any of the format, and if it is a mesh word, all the entry terms will be included in that. As I said, search is definitely a different workshop altogether. So, but this is a basic format that we try to tell you. You have to combine free text words and you have to combine the keywords that you're using. So here also now you can start using AI for your help. Identify the primary keywords like bleaching or home bleaching or office bleaching. You put it in ChatGPT or put it in lit maps or connected papers, and you are going to get the articles which are connected with it, with those keywords. And you would, in the end, at the end of the abstract, you will find more keywords, and you can include those keywords in the particular. Like I said, if you have to combine with or, you need more terms, so related terms can come with this kind of AI tools. Well, expand with synonyms. You can have a PubMed Mesh database. You have Shite.ai, which is very useful in this. Again, not the time to give you a hands on for this, but this is how we maintain a chart, because this is very helpful in formulating a search strategy. You need concepts like dental bleaching, home bleaching, office bleaching, and effectiveness. You need text words, the controlled vocabulary, and also you can see the synonyms are also mentioned in all the text words. So this is a kind of chart which is very, very useful when you you try to formulate a search strategy. Once you formulated a search strategy, now you put it in the various databases. Now this is the Prisma step, which is preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So in the based on the inclusion and the exclusion criteria, you have this kind of a Prisma flowchart which is available. You identify the preliminary studies, then you screen them based on your inclusion and exclusion criteria, and you remove a few studies based on the eligibility. Then in all the databases, you also check for duplication in various databases, and then finally the inclusion of the various articles from various databases is finally done in the last step. So in the left, I've just shown how the various, this is the new Prisma flowchart which is available, and this is a kind of diagram that you have to present in any of the publication for systematic reviews, even for scoping reviews. As I said, that is also done in a critical format. So this is a Prisma flowchart. Prisma checklist is different for scoping review and systematic review, but this is a kind of a 27 item checklist that you have for Prisma. And scoping review has its separate checklist, but this is primarily will tell you what kind of inclusions have to be there in Prisma. Then the step 6, which is quality assessment. Individual studies have to be analyzed for quality assessment, and if they are randomized trials or if they are non-randomized, different kind of tools are being used. So if there are randomized trials, then ROB tools are used, ROB 1, 2, Cochrane tools that are majorly used, because we use Revman software which actually uses these tools. But for non-randomized, you can have JBI, Newcastle, Ottawa, or Robbins One tools. So there are many tools which are used, but you have to get well versed with it and what kind of studies you are including. Like if you are using diagnostic studies, then Quadas tool is very good, which is quality assessment for diagnostic accuracy studies. So Quadas 2 tool is good if you're using the diagnostic accuracy studies. ROB tool for the randomized trials. So you can have various, these are the various links that are available. You can click a picture, or I think this is getting recorded, so you can do these you can go through these kind of links, and they would give you additional help if you want to perform the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. After you've done the quality assessment, now you have, okay, now you've finalized, this is the amount of studies that I'm going to include. Now you have to do the data extraction. Data extraction definitely depends on what kind of data you want to study in that particular study. If it is a dichotomous data or a continuous data, dichotomous means, okay, either yes or no. So that kind of data extraction. But the kind of study that I was mentioning, like the effect of cytokines on tooth movement, there I've identified it into participant characteristics, study characteristics, methodology, and outcomes. I have classified my data And Rayan is a very, very good tool for your identification of studies, for your duplication assessment, and then finally for data extraction also. So please, if you want to do Rayan.ai, you can go through it. Many of the features here are freely available, but if you want to get a paid version, you can also generate Prisma in a paid version. So this is also one of the tools which is very, very useful when you want to perform a systematic review or even a scoping review. Right now, we register everything in Rayan before we even begin any scoping review. So this is a kind of a tabular format, like how the results are presented in a systematic review, like the participants, the study characteristics, the result characteristics, all of them. You can customize it also. This is how I've customized it. I've just given you an example how I have customized it for my studies. After that, the data synthesis, you can have a qualitative data synthesis or a quantitative. Quantitative can definitely be meta-analysis, which is not the preview of this particular lecture, but I will be just telling you that this is a quantitatively, if you have some values to be added on to and you want to present a result, in that you have a meta-analysis where the weighted pooled estimate is calculated for the interventions. But if you want to do just the qualitative analysis, then you have to stick just to the systematic review or a scoping review. You can add visual illustrations. This is my particular recommendation to you. Whenever you try to synthesize the results, please always give it in a visual format. Whatever you have understood of the results, you present it in a visual format so that it is very, very palatable for the readers. The readers may not like to go through the whole tables. Tables definitely are going to be there. But the gist of it, how they have to apply it into their healthcare interventions, why we are doing this, we are doing this for improving our healthcare interventions. So if they have to apply it to their healthcare interventions, if you just present it in one flow chart, in one mind map, or in any of the figurative form, it is more easy for them to understand and to apply it in their clinics. Dissemination has to be there in the form of publications. Updation, well, if I've published one systematic review in 2014, I need to update it every 5 years and I have to put it in Prospero again. And it has to be 2 years or 5 years, preferably. You have to update your systematic reviews which are published. So this is a kind of dissemination, just for giving a brief overview of a little amount of work that we have done in the field of systematic reviews and meta-analysis and scoping reviews. So microRNAs is also another area of interest that we have just developed, because that is my PhD topic. So I'm trying to highlight that so many articles can just come during your thesis. You can publish your review of literature in the form of scoping review. You can publish any kind of results that you have, preliminary results that you have, in the form of scoping review. So those kind of stuff, we have to have that bent of mind, that publications don't happen after your MDS or after your PhD. They happen during that process also. So salivary signature, orthodontic forces in enzymes, and biomarkers in body fluids as indicators of skeletal maturity, external apical root resorption. So this is how we've completed all the steps of systematic reviews in a very brief view. And just one slide about meta-analysis. So this is very interesting. You must have seen the Cochrane logo. So what does this tell you? This logo, what does this tell you? Well, in the center is a forest plot. So this forest plot is a figure which is mentioning the results of a study or a systematic review which was done when corticosteroids were given to the women who were about to give birth to the preterm babies. So, what effects the corticosteroids had on the longevity of those preterm babies? So, basically, this is that study, and that has become the logo of Cochrane. And if you look at the blue C's that are there, that represents their global representation. So, you see, every logo also has a lot of meaning. So some stats are there. This is just basically one logo that I wanted to explain to you. Forest plot, we need to know how to combine quantitatively all the results and present it in the form of forest plot. But there are some limitations to the current practices of systematic reviews, because I always tell all the students who attend our workshops that the maximum amount of time you have to develop these search strategies. The search strategies have to be very, very comprehensive. Only then you will get all the results from all the databases. The screening and quality assessment of primary studies is very important, because now the AMSTAR tools are there. Even if you publish a systematic review, that will also be graded for its what kind of quality of systematic review is there. So those AMSTAR tools are going to grade your systematic reviews also. So be very stringent in screening and quality assessment of your primary studies. Pooling of data, examination of heterogeneity, and interpretation of finding, duplication, all these are limitations which we have to really look into. These are some of the tools that are really, really important for you. For data extraction, Covidence is good. Rayan, as I said, is good. Covidence is, but it is paid. JPI extraction tool is also there. Although I'm not very happy with the JPI data extraction tool, I really am very comfortable with Rayan.ai. Quality assessment, yes, JBI.global is important. Search and registry, as I said, OSF, Open Science Platform, RR database, or Open Gray database, that's also important. Take home messages: please don't start this journey alone. Always do it in a team, as I said. Take help from systematic reviews. Please don't shy away from taking help. Find out where the subscriptions are available, because Scopus, Embase, all are paid subscriptions. Web of Science is a paid subscription. Where they're available, you need to know. And do not follow AI blindly. I have mentioned time and again in my slides where you can use AI, but do not follow it blindly. If you type your search strategy also on AI, it is going to absolutely confuse you. So never do that. Perform all the steps diligently, the 9 steps that I've just mentioned. Learn the softwares like Zotero for reference management, Rayan, Revman. All these you have to be comfortable with. Give maximum time to finalize your search strategy, and do not forget the international registration of Prospero for systematic reviews, but you do not need it for scoping reviews. Goals yet to accomplish: yes, the systematic reviews have to be done on multiple topics, interdisciplinary, and I have to encourage the postgraduates to perform the search systematically in a thesis. Please publish your review of literature in the form of scoping review. Form review team, prior registration mandatory, and this is just a link for helping you with the systematic review. Incorporate quality in research for enrichment of scientific validity in oral healthcare. Thank you so much. I think I stuck to my time. If so, I'm really open for any kind of questions that you have, and yes, I'm ready to learn from you. I'll just stop sharing.
Good evening,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Thank you, Dr. Priyanka.
Uh,
Who is this?
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
I'm Anshita.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I have a doubt.
Okay, please.
Good evening, ma'am. So, in a in order to work with meta-analysis, minimum how many comparable studies we have to take to um, include that for meta-analysis?
See, there is no minimum amount of studies. Obviously, it has to be more than one. But to be included in a meta analysis, first of all, as I said, the systematic review part has to be done. So the quality assessment has to be done. So after that, even if two good quality studies are there, you can combine it into a meta analysis. That's not a point. Even for Cochrane, as I mentioned, there were 14 studies and only one could qualify. That was not published in the form of meta analysis. But even if there were two studies, they could combine it. But the quality of those included studies has to be very good. But obviously, why would you like to do a meta analysis on two studies? There need to be some amount of minimum, maybe 5 or 6 good studies. The sample size which are included in meta analysis is also very important. So even those studies which are included should have good sample size also. So you have to look for many of the factors like heterogeneity. You have to look for many factors in meta analysis before you include. But if you follow the systematic review and meta analysis stringent process, there is no mentioned minimum amount of studies in that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And I have a doubt, like on which criteria we have to if that the studies are eligible for a meta-analysis, because I feel in my study what I'm doing right now is I'm assessing the plaque score by comparing the two different toothbrushes on an children with intellectual disability. So I just want to know like which on which criteria I have to select studies for doing a meta-analysis.
See, you have to, as I said, it's very difficult to identify your research question from here. We can discuss it separately also, because for a meta analysis, there has to be some quantitative measure which you are trying to combine in various studies. If they are looking through the same parameters and they have analyzed something quantitatively, and you want to combine all that, then definitely, because I need to know all your research question, your PICO, your outcome. So based on that outcome only, I can tell you. So we can discuss it separately also. You can mail me and I can just tell you. That's not.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
Dr.
sir.
Anchita, like if I can add just what Dr. Priyanka has also told, if heterogeneity is very high, most what I can make out, you're going to get some mean plaque values. That's what I can, since I'm public health dentist, so I can make out from what, if I'm not wrong. So if you're going to get some mean plaque values of two different toothbrushes, which you are going to compare, you know. So, but if you have to see that if heterogeneity of particular clinical trial is high, it's better not to. You can remove those uh, I would say low quality or poor quality trials also from there.
Yes.
Once, if you do
Quality.
Revman and all, you can exclude them. So, ma'am has not taken it today because it's a systematic review, but in meta-analysis, if you're doing, you can exclude them.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
You have the ROB tool option in that Revman software. So where you
Mm.
get those, red marks. So you can obviously,
Yeah.
like Dr. Abhishek has
Mm.
said, you can just remove those studies. If you get too many low quality, high risk of bias, then you can remove that.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
This is Dr. Indra. I have a doubt, ma'am.
Yes.
During while doing the meta-analysis, what is the criteria to check for fixed effect or random effect to choose?
See, as I said, this is like not the platform to discuss the meta-analysis per se. But Dr. Abhishek, we can hold a session
Yeah.
separately. I think many of the participants have the, in fact, did not even include the slides on meta-analysis
Yeah,
in
yeah,
this.
yeah. I
Just
mean,
for
it's
this,
not possible also.
yeah. So we can
Covering.
have a separate session on meta-analysis. I think they have a lot of issues in meta-analysis.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Dr. Indra, it's given like where to use fixed effect and where to use random effect. If you just like
in
wherever
fact, you
the
can actually discuss with
with
examples. We can have that.
heterogeneity is less, then you can use the fixed effect. And when you have more of heterogeneity, use random effect. That's what I think. That's what I
Okay, sir.
Fixed
think.
effects, I don't think it's used quite often, because
Or
you
maybe,
definitely have
yeah,
certain
really.
amount of heterogeneity, and it's always preferable that in
No,
majority of
like
the meta-analysis, yeah,
in more of where more of observation studies will be there, it will
you can
have the
use.
random effect will be used. If there are very few good clinical trial, if you get, as ma'am said, then okay, in some situation you might be able to use fixed effect.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any doubt?
Sir,
We have
sir, I have a question.
Yeah, please introduce
Um,
yourself.
uh, Good evening, sir. My name is Mika. It was a very nice session. Thank you, ma'am. I have a question. How many minimum keywords should be there in a systematic review?
Very important. There are no minimum keywords again. As I said, you break it into concepts. Now, if your concepts are more than two, then your keywords can be, and keywords also, as I said, maintain a table. For those keywords also use synonyms. You combine it with or. Different concepts have to be combined with and. There can be two also. Like, it's not important. You can just have two. For example, the last one which I did was on biomolecular mediators in mandibular cartilage growth. So I just had two: mandibular cartilage growth and biomolecular mediators. For the biomolecular mediators, I had a long list of synonyms. For the mandibular condylar growth, I had a long list, but two main keywords were there. But for the synonyms, you can use a lot many of them.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
That table which ma'am has given, we'll share the PPTs. And that table ma'am has given is really good. I also find it very useful where you have given for each keyword how to
Yeah.
expand it.
And even those AI tools are very helpful. I've recently started using them. They're very, very helpful
So
for
I
giving
have a
the
question
synonyms
now.
at least.
So I have a question now for you.
Yes,
Since you are talking about AI, ma'am, see, we mentioned that we have done the search in PubMed, we have done search in Google Scholar. So should we write when publishing that we have used AI tools?
Yes, actually,
Okay.
all the good quality journals are going to ask you whether you
Hmm.
have used AI tools. So you don't have to use generative AI for writing your manuscript or actually, for the search strategy. But you can tell them where you have used that AI and for what purpose. That
Yes.
paragraph has to be included in your publication. They are going to ask you. Good quality journals all ask you these days.
Why I ask, because AI has got a very bad name
Yeah.
as far as research is concerned, because most people think that we are just copy pasting from AI. So that's why I asked you
Yeah,
this
you
question.
remember Dr. Abhishek, we were attending that session, we were sitting side by side, and that person was mentioning, okay, you put the search strategy on Chat GPT. So the
Yes,
whole
yes.
strategy, when you put on search Chat GPT, you tell them, okay, this is the research question. Now you formulate a search strategy, you put it on Chat GPT. It
Mm.
will give you nonsense answers. So
Mm.
yes, you need to know, as I mentioned at every step I've mentioned, before that, don't use AI. Just use it for that particular purpose, like
Particular.
for search question, like for synonyms, fine, but not for the whole search strategy because it confuses you a lot and it's going to give you haywire results.
Any other questions, any other doubts? We'll be sharing the feedback form also. There also you can ask whether it's, in what particular subtopic you want to have more information. That also can be done.
I
If at
think
this
I've
point, if
identified
somebody
meta-analysis is one thing that
that
everybody wants to discuss.
that is like statistician thing also, na? Like we are always scared of the stats part.
But it's
So,
interesting. Forest Cloud
yeah,
is
yeah.
very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, ma'am. Somebody
Boolean
Boolean, yeah,
terminology.
okay. Yeah,
Okay,
somebody is
so I've
asking.
mentioned Boolean terminologies and or not. Yes, I forgot to mention that not we don't use very often.
Mm.
And definitely, as I said, two different concepts like home bleaching aid and effectiveness. So there are two different concepts. You can combine them with and. But home bleaching or home bleach, that are synonyms that you have to combine with or. Not, please don't use, because if you write not, even the studies who have one of the either of the concept will be excluded. Like if I say that I'm going to study cytokines in tooth movement and I type not enzymes, so if some of the studies are there which have cytokines also and enzymes also, it is going to eliminate those studies also. So don't preferably use not, we only use and or.
Uh, there is one more question in the chat box. Have we missed it or have we addressed this one? I don't know. That can you highlight, ma'am, on minimum databases for the scoping review?
Scoping review,
But
again, the same minimum three databases and good quality. As I said, please don't use Google Scholar. Don't consider Google Scholar as one of your scientific database. No, it really, really has a lot of unnecessary information available. So use PubMed, use Embase, use Web of Science, and use Scopus. These are four databases. Out of that, minimum three you should definitely use. And Dr. Abhishek is here. So our university definitely has a paid subscription for Scopus and Web of Science. So if you finalize your search strategy, you can ask for help. As I said, don't shy away from asking for help. So you can give the search strategy, we can put it for you, and we can give you the results. Not a problem.
is there any other queries from the participant?
There is one about an umbrella review. Yes.
Ah,
So
Hmm.
umbrella review.
So
So
umbrella reviews has to combine the systematic reviews.
yeah,
First of
yeah.
all, you
Combining
perform the
all.
systematic review, and then how you have to compile is a different process altogether. Again, the quality assessment has to be there. As I said, the
Mm.
systematic review doesn't stop there. So there's so many tools to actually judge what kind of systematic review also you are publishing. And your researchers' credibility holds a lot of value. As I mentioned in my first slide, when Paparegio article I had mentioned, that is one researcher who's publishing excellent systematic review. Farhad Shokraneh is one researcher who is a medical librarian, but excellent research he is producing in evidence-based research. So yes, those good quality reviews, if you include in your umbrella review, that can be a separate topic again altogether.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, I think we'll close it now.
Close it. So as
Yeah.
we have come to the end of today's session, I would like to thank ma'am for your wonderful, insightful session today, and all the participants for joining us to our 6th webinar series. And you all will be getting the recorded of the webinar in our core program YouTube channel, so you can find it out, the webinar. And we'll be sharing the e-certificate participations to your mail ID within the next few days. So I'd like to thank everyone and also to ma'am for the good webinar session today.
I would like to thank Abhishek sir also for this opportunity, and Dr. Aman has also joined. He's my team member, my partner in crime in almost all the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So yes, thank you so much, Dr. Abhishek.
Thank you, Dr. Vivek.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Okay. Bye. Bye, everyone. Please close the session.
Yes, sir.